Hey guys, Rick here with a special announcement. You all know about CyberWire Pro, our subscription service that unlocks access to our premium and original programming, where we bring in leading industry experts to create informative and actionable cybersecurity content that you just can't get anywhere else. I wanted to let you all know about a special promotion we're currently running for Memorial Day. Just this week, you'll get 1 month free on top of the already discounted price of $99 when you purchase a CyberWire Pro annual subscription. Sign up and get your free month at thecyberwire.com/Memorial Day.
And now, a message from our sponsor, CyberReason. Cybersecurity defenders don't fear ransomware, they end it. With CyberReason, defenders detect and stop ransomware that even others miss. A promise backed by their $1 million breach warranty. At CyberReason, they don't fear ransomware, they end it. Learn more at cyberreason.com. A phishing campaign this week appears to be the work of Russia's SVR. Chinese government threat actors continue to exploit unpatched Pulse Secure instances. The FBI renews warnings about unpatched Fortinet appliances. Healthcare organizations still work to recover from ransomware. Rick Howard speaks with author Andy Greenberg on his book Sandworm. Ben Yelin weighs in on questions Senator Wyden has for the Pentagon. And a look at the criminal ransomware market, including the consultants who serve the extortionists. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Friday, May 28th, 2021. The week ends with more stories of cyber espionage. Microsoft yesterday announced its discovery of a new campaign by the Russian threat actor Redmond calls Nobelium, which is the group others know as Cozy Bear. By general consensus, it is associated with both Russia's SVR and the SolarWinds compromise. Nobelium this week succeeded in compromising a constant contact email marketing service account belonging to the U.S. State Department's Internal Assistance Agency, USAID. The threat actor then used that account to send convincing phishing emails to more than 3,000 accounts at over 150 organizations. The fish hook was a link that installed the native zone backdoor, and Microsoft has provided technical details about the attack. U.S. organizations were most heavily targeted, but at least 23 other countries were also affected. Velocity, which has also been tracking Cozy Bear's new campaign, points out that the fish bait in the emails was frequently election-themed. Here's one representative screamer: USAID special alert. Donald Trump has published new documents on election fraud. Another is foreign threats to the 2020 U.S. federal elections, which seems like a cheeky bit of fish bait for Cozy Bear to use as chum. Velocity doesn't claim to have any certainty about who's behind the campaign, but it does think the attack looks like the work of a known threat actor it has dealt with on several previous occasions. It does cite 4 attributes that point toward APT-29, that is, the SVR. The attackers use an archive file format with an LNK to deliver the initial payload. This technique was observed in 2018. They also used an election-themed lure that appears to come from a U.S. government source. This has been seen since 2016. Cobalt Strike with a custom malleable profile was used as an initial payload, as has been done since 2018. And finally, the scope and timing of the campaign looks like the familiar paw prints of a Huggy Bear. Many targets got the same phishing content at about the same time. Chinese intelligence services have also been busy. FireEye's Mandiant unit has followed up earlier research into Pulse VPN exploitation and concluded that the Beijing-linked threat actors UNC 2630 and UNC 2717 have introduced 4 new families of malware and deployed these against economic verticals given priority in China's 14th five-year plan. The cyber espionage is characterized as sophisticated and evasive, and as exhibiting an intimate familiarity with the victim's networks. The 4 new strains of malware are Bloodmine, a utility that parses Pulse Secure Connect log files and extracts information related to logins, message IDs, and web requests. It then copies the data it obtains to another file. Bloodbank, a credential theft utility that parses 2 files containing password hashes or plain text passwords and expects an output file to be given at the command prompt. Clean Pulse, a memory patching utility that may be used to prevent certain log events from occurring. Researchers found Clean Pulse in close proximity to an Atrium web shell. And finally, Rapid Pulse, a web shell that's capable of arbitrary file read. As other web shells so often do, Rapid Pulse exists as a modification to a legitimate Pulse Secure file. The attacker can use Rapid Pulse as an encrypted file downloader. While some European organizations have been targeted, the great majority of those affected have been in the United States. The US FBI yesterday warned that foreign actors were exploiting unpatched Fortinet VPNs to compromise US municipal governments. Quote, as of at least May 2021, an APT actor group almost certainly exploited a FortiGate appliance to access a web server hosting the domain for a U.S. municipal government. The APT actors likely created an account with the username Ellie to further enable malicious activity on that network. End quote. Once they're in, the attackers can accomplish a number of unwelcome things: data exfiltration, further malware installation, data encryption, and so on. Organizations that think they may have been affected should look for FTP transfers over port 443 and unrecognized scheduled tasks, especially synchronized time zone. This isn't the first warning the FBI or CISA have issued about the risk of leaving Fortinet appliances unpatched, and we emphasize that Fortinet has had a patch available for some time. Their first warning arrived on October 12th of last year. The second was issued almost 2 months ago on April 2nd. There's almost a touch of weariness in yesterday's warning. It's like, come on, people, how much more can we spell it out for you? Tell His Honor to have people patch the city's stuff, okay? It's worth noting that local governments shouldn't presume they enjoy immunity from the attentions of unfriendly foreign states. BlackBerry puts the worldwide Conti ransomware victim count north of 400. A lot of these have been healthcare or first responder targets, prominently Ireland's HSE, New Zealand's Waikato DHB, and California's Scripps Health, all 3 of which continue to work toward recovery. BlackBerry took a look at the free decryptor Conti operators offered in a fit of either remorse or, more probably, fear of the attention from law enforcement that widespread public odium would spur. BlackBerry concluded that the decryptor was indeed legitimate and not a further scam, but lest one be inclined to credit Conti operators with a functioning conscience, consider the comment they provided NewsHub about their infestation in Waikato. Quote, for last 3 days we tried to contact them and we offered help with restoring the network. With our help they could restore it for 1 day. Without our help they will have to rebuild their network from the beginning. They decided to ignore us and torture their employees and patients. It is only their fault that DHB is still offline. They can't use their backups. We deleted most of it. End quote. NewsHub also reported that the Cancer Society's medical director called the ransomware attack worse than COVID, which seems perhaps overheated, but there's little doubt that disrupting networks in Waikato has also disrupted the delivery of care. In Ireland, officials now estimate that the total costs of the Conti attack on HSE will probably exceed €100 million. The dark side is another crew that's claimed to have gone dark, but U.S. law enforcement authorities aren't counting on them keeping their word, InfoSecurity magazine reports. If you take the gangs at their word, then, hey, we've got a non-fungible token of a perpetual motion machine you may be interested in as an investment opportunity. And finally, the underground criminal economy is a complex one that mirrors many aspects of legitimate markets. Crooks have their consultants, just as legitimate businesses do, Gemini Advisory reports. They squabble sometimes. A dark web fight between R-Evil and a criminal middleman, a ransomware consultant, has revealed some of the features of that market. The consultant scouts victims to come up with recommendations for a ransom the victims are likely to pay, and also handles negotiations between the extortionists and the victims. Sleazy, but still complex. And now, a word from our sponsor, Barracuda. A year ago, your business may have been part of that massive shift to remote working employees. Ever since, cybercriminals have been working overtime. Now, they're leveraging activity around the COVID vaccine to disguise phishing attacks, hoping to steal money or personal information. That can cost you customers hundreds of thousands of dollars and your reputation in the marketplace. Your email gateway is good for stopping viruses, but you're defenseless against targeted attacks like phishing, account takeover, and hijacking. The Barracuda Email Threat Scanner is a free tool you can use right now to help protect your employees, your business, and your customers. The Barracuda Email Threat Scanner analyzes your Office 365 accounts and identifies malicious emails that slipped past your gateway. Find the cybersecurity threats that are hiding in your Office 365 email right now. Use the Barracuda Email Threat Scanner for free at barracuda.com/cyberwire. That's barracuda.com/cyberwire. And we thank Barracuda for sponsoring our show. Rick Howard winds up his week-long series of interviews with highly respected authors of cybersecurity books, each one an inductee into the cybersecurity canon. Here's Rick with the latest.
We are at the end of Cybersecurity Canon Hall of Fame week here at the CyberWire. I've been interviewing all the winning authors for this year, and our final interview is with Andy Greenberg, the author of Sandworm, A New Era of Cyber War. I asked Andy, what exactly is Sandworm?
Sandworm is a group of Russian hackers that since late 2015 or so have carried out what I think is the first full-blown cyber war. Starting in Ukraine, they attacked pretty much every part of Ukrainian society with these data-destructive attacks that hit media and the private sector and government agencies, and then ultimately the electric utilities, causing the first ever blackouts triggered by cyber attacks. Sandworm hit Ukraine's power grid not once but twice in late 2015 and then again in late 2016. And then finally, this Ukrainian cyber war that Sandworm was waging, essentially, in the middle of 2017, exploded out to the rest of the world with this cyber attack called unpatched, a worm, a self-propagating piece of fake ransomware that was actually just a destructive attack that spread from Ukraine to the rest of the world and took down a whole bunch of multinational companies, medical record systems, and hospitals across the United States, and ultimately cost $10 billion in global damages, the worst cyber attack in history by a good measure. So the story of Sandworm is a detective story about the security researchers across the private sector trying to track this group and figure out who they are and try to warn the world that this Ukrainian cyber war was soon going to spill out and hit us too. And then that is exactly what happened. And when that happens, the book kind of switches from a detective story to a disaster story. And I track the effects of NotPetya across the world as it causes this wave of devastation.
I've been including Sandworm into a triad of recent must-read Cybersecurity Canon Hall of Fame books that not only tells the history of the relatively new development of continuous low-level cyber conflict between nation-states from about 2010 until present, but also attempts to explain the current thinking of some of the key cyber power players like Russia, China, the United States, Iran, and North Korea. David Sanger's Hall of Fame book, Perfect Weapon, covers the history and key thinking of all the power players. Richard Clark and Robert Nackey's Hall of Fame book, Fifth Domain, covers similar material, but leans towards the policy side of the discussion. And finally, Andy Greenberg's Hall of Fame book, Sandworm, focuses specifically on Russia. The book is called Sandworm, A New Era of Cyber War by Andy Greenberg, and you can hear a much more in-depth, longer interview in my CSO Perspectives podcast exclusively on the CyberWire Pro subscription services. And congratulations to Andy for his induction into the Cybersecurity Canon Hall of Fame.
It's time to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Ninjio. Are you tired of boring cybersecurity awareness training PowerPoints that don't keep your attention? Turn your team into cybersecurity ninjas by getting them Ninjio'd. Through animation, micro-learning episodes featuring celebrity actors, Ninjio empowers individuals and organizations to obtain the skills, habits, and behaviors to truly become your last line of defense against cyber threats. Written and produced by Hollywood writers and based on real-life ripped-from-the-headlines events, millions of employees have come to love Ninjio. With easy-to-remember security awareness lessons and teachable moments, companies using Ninjio report a drastic decrease in cyber attacks based on human error. So head on over to ninjio.com, that's Ninjio.com, to learn more and watch their latest episode for free. And we thank Ninjio for sponsoring our show. And joining me once again is Ben Yelin. He's from the University of Maryland Center for Health and Homeland Security, but also my co-host over on the Caveat podcast. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Dave.
Interesting story from Joseph Cox over on the Vice website, and it's titled Pentagon Surveilling Americans Without a Warrant, Senator Reveals. What's going on here, Ben?
So this is Senator Ron Wyden, who, if there is a story about government surveillance and it involves a lawmaker, you probably have a 90% chance that it's going to be Ron Wyden.
Right.
He has sent a letter to the Department of Defense asking them to declassify a program where they are conducting warrantless surveillance of Americans. So he's asking for detailed information from the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, the NSA, and the Director of National Intelligence about this program where special forces in the U.S. military are buying location data from data brokers. So these are private data brokers, and without a warrant, the government is going in and obtaining some of this data. So Senator Wyden has a bunch of questions that he specifically wants answered. One, I think that's particularly relevant, both because it's what the majority of the American people care about, and there's some legal significance, is how many of these communications were between American citizens or U.S. persons, where you have an American person on one end or the other. Those types of communications merit significant Fourth Amendment protection, even if they have some sort of national security implication. You know, other communications, when we're talking about somebody's phone conversations or internet traffic being incidentally scooped up because they've been coordinating with an overseas terrorism target, that might have a slightly higher justification under the law. But that's sort of what Senator Wyden is asking here is, what is the extent of this data collection program? So the ask here, and this is a letter to the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, is please release this information publicly so members of Congress, including those that aren't on the relevant intelligence committees, can have a reasoned debate on what the issues are here. And this can inform the decision of lawmakers as to whether to pass some sort of remedial legislation like the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act, which we discussed on our Caveat podcast.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that caught my eye here is Wyden is making the point that a lot of this information they can't publish, like some of the responses from the DoD they can't publish because some of their answers are classified, and Senator Wyden is pushing them to declassify these answers, as you say, so they can have more public review.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the problems about any sort of public debate about these programs is oftentimes we're all flying blind. You know, some of the only public debates we've had about counterterrorism intelligence programs have been after high-profile leaks, looking at you, Mr. Edward Snowden. Other than that, it's really hard to have reasoned debate on this because even if information is declassified, it's usually declassified long enough in advance that, you know, the particular information might not be timely or relevant, you know, the way it had been 6 or 8 months ago. You know, so we see that with the release of FISA court opinions, where it reflects information that might have been useful, you know, a year ago, but the intelligence community has already moved on. They have different targets. They already have new methods under consideration. And that's what's happening here. there are some members of Congress, particularly the 8 members of the leadership in the House and the Senate, and then the chair and ranking members of the Intelligence Committee, who are able to see this. But they can't really spark a public debate if so many other members of Congress and the general public are completely in the dark as to how this program works. And it's one thing that's very frustrating about trying to seek reform on these types of issues is you are dealing with classified information.
Right.
I will say that, there's a reason this information is classified. It really does reveal some of our intelligence methods. It could reveal confidential sources. And, so it's not like they're just arbitrarily keeping things classified, although they have done that in the past.
Yeah, Wyden kind of speaks to that, too. In his letter to Secretary of Defense Austin, he sort of points to, I guess, that notion of that the DoD has been accused of overclassifying things. And in Wyden's letter, he says, information should only be classified if its unauthorized disclosure would cause damage to national security. The information provided by DoD in response to my questions does not meet that bar. Interesting.
Yeah. So I'll tell you
is that for him to say?
It is. I will tell you a quick story, though. That is a staple of mine in some of my law classes. There was a very famous Supreme Court case, United States v. Reynolds, which came out in 1953, which was about the so-called state secrets privilege, where the government could assert that a case concerns a state secret, and that case could be dismissed from court, where the plaintiffs wouldn't be able to seek relief. So this was a case where family members of people who were in the military sued the government because their family members died due to a plane crash, and they were alleging that potentially the government was negligent in the design or operation of these airplanes. And since these were military aircraft, the government at the time said, this is highly secretive information. We can't litigate this. If we did, we would be revealing state secrets, and that would do damage to our national security. We're trying to fight the USSR here. Let's get serious. Mm-hmm. Came out about 40 years later, while some of the plaintiffs of this case were still alive, that was basically BS. That there was no relevant national security information in the Reynolds case. And in fact, they really tried to conceal the information because they were scared of facing civil liability. So it became this kind of cautionary tale about overclassification. Right. And maybe I sound paranoid, but it is a lesson to, not just instinctively trust when the government says they're classifying something for national security purposes, because they've been known to lie in the past.
I guess that's exactly what Senator Wyden is doing here. He's the one he has a view into this, having the ability to see the classified information and share his opinion that it doesn't meet that standard.
Yeah, and Senator Wyden has done this before. He said things on the Senate floor like, I know things I'm not allowed to say here, but if you don't release unclassified information, I might find a way to make it public. It's just because he is very passionate about these surveillance issues. Yeah.
All right, well, the article is over on the Vice website. It's titled Pentagon Surveilling Americans Without a Warrant, Senator Reveals, written by Joseph Cox. Ben Yelin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. If you are looking for something to do over the upcoming long holiday weekend, at least here in the U.S., be sure to check out my conversation with Brandon Hoffman from Intel 471 on Research Saturday. We're discussing Silent, the Underground's new favorite Maldoc builder. That's Research Saturday. Check it out. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Guru Prakash, Kelsey Bond, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yelin, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next week.